Hello, I'm Robert Scoble, and you're watching WorkFast TV, which is about how the internet is changing work. This show is supported through the generous support of SAP. SAP provides software that helps both large and small businesses manage their business, lower costs, and bring more services to their business relationship partners. Thanks to SAP for supporting this show and social media around the world. My guest today is David Kralik, Director of Internet Strategies for American Solutions, which is Newt Gingrich's eGovernment effort, which is going to be a lot of fun to talk about. We just visited Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago, and I kept hearing Newt's doing amazing stuff in the eGovernment world. He's really pushing the boundaries, and I kept hearing his name from both Republicans and Democrats. And so when I met you last week at the Always On conference, I wanted to talk about that. So yeah. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So tell me a little bit about, because most people haven't heard you. I didn't know who you were. You know, I just heard the reputation of Newt and what he was trying to do, but you're like one of the only political offices in Silicon Valley, you told me?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you know, McCain and Obama both have political offices, but it's, you know, primarily to raise money and, you know, get out the vote. By our best count, you know, we are the only national political organization that has an office in Silicon Valley, and it's not to raise money or, and we're not running for any office. It's primarily just to learn from key executives what we can do to, you know, migrate government into the 21st century.
Yeah, the other thing I learned in D.C. was there's huge rafts of our government that are still run on paper and still. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that, because you lived in D.C. for a while, right?
Yeah, well, you know, the most recent example I'd love to share with you and our listeners and viewers today is about the U.S. Census Bureau. And about 2 months ago, the Census Bureau decided they were going to scrap a program to have handheld computers to count all the citizens in the year 2010. They're chartered by Congress and by the Constitution to, you know, do a count every 10 years of all the people. And in the census, you know, it's not a trivial matter. It's what decides where our congressional districts get divided up, and by that nature, you know, when the government decides to spend money, how they appropriate money, all the different congressional districts, and, you know, for different services. So. And it provides a lot of useful data on, you know, demographics of the United States. Well, so they decided to scrap a program. Instead, they're going back to counting people the way they counted people in since 1790 by paper and pencil. And we really just kind of had a bit of a pause for thinking that, you know, in the year 2010, that we're still counting people by paper and pencil. When you know, consider that MySpace, you know, if it were its own country, would be the fourth largest country in the world at, you know, some 225 million members. Yeah. There's more text messages sent than yesterday than people on the planet. And, you know, probably Newt wrote a book last year called Real Change. And he talks about issues like this and more. What sparked the desire for real change last year was we put a video out on YouTube. It's been seen by about 1.5 million people, called FedEx versus UPS, or FedEx versus federal government. And in it, he talks about how the Homeland Security Department can't find where they estimate about 20 million illegal immigrants are. So whether it's find them to deport them or find them to give them amnesty, we just don't know where they are. And so, but FedEx and UPS collectively track, ship, and deliver on time 20 million packages a day. So that leads us, you know, Newt has this little line in the video. It's a very simple conclusion. You know, outsource the finding of the immigrants to FedEx and UPS. We mail them all a package. We track them. We know where they are. And you're laughing, but people get it, and people realize, wait a minute, there are things that clearly work in Silicon Valley, in the private sector, and there are clearly things that just don't work in the government. And so the government is largely epitomized by the world that fails, and, you know, Silicon Valley here and you know, other sectors of the industry, private industry, are, you know, the world that works. And so
it's the incentive systems, right? I talked to several people who said, you know, the geeks just don't get the support in DC because there's no incentive for anybody to improve anything, right? Because you're going to have your job tomorrow, whether you improved your job or not, or found a new way to do it, or you know, found a more efficient way to do it. In fact, there's a disincentive to make things more efficient, because then your job goes away, right?
Oh, it's exactly right. You know, it's in, you know, with a lot of times, a lot of agencies have a rule in place that if they don't spend the money they're given, they get less the following year. So there's almost now here's where an incentive matters. There's an incentive to spend all the money you're given. So at the last quarter, usually when the most technology spending happens in the government, because you're just going to spend it on everything they can just to make sure that they've shown that they've spent all their money so they get more money the following year. You know, when I moved out here in January, it occurred to me that I started beginning thinking about things like, you know, what if the federal government worked on the Google, 20% time motto, that, its best and brightest employees got to spend, 1 day a week or figure out a different time to just explore things to make things better and just free to innovate. What kind of federal government might you see in that kind of system? But instead, we're locked into a very 19th century bureaucratic civil service model that the laws haven't changed. It's literally as if if you walked in to a federal government office and you saw somebody on a high stool dipping a feather into a quill and writing in a government office today, you'd think that's kind of weird, and be like, something looks out of, something's not right in this picture. But literally, the laws that govern our civil service employees were written during that period. They haven't been updated, and so I think that's.
No, and there's all sorts of weird laws, weird rules, weird laws. For instance, you're not allowed to take a photo of the Senate, the door into the Senate, right? And
I've heard that.
And that rule has been there because of flash photography in the old days, where they had these big, huge flash guns that would really disrupt things. Well, now we have cameras that don't need flash, right? But the rule hasn't changed, and the rule's not going to change because nobody wants to rewrite the rules, right?
Yeah, exactly right. So, So American Solutions, was founded by Speaker Gingrich last January. I moved out here this past January, really to learn from the private sector what's working. Yeah. And so I do this weekly report. Right now it's a private blog, just because I don't have quite the nice equipment that you have here. But I call it From the Valley to the Hill, and so where I talk about the learnings that I do. Traveling up and down 101 or 280, different companies that I get to meet, and just trying to figure out, what can we as American Solutions do to possibly use some of these different social media technologies, or what can we apply, for future learnings that the speaker can use in his various speeches or anecdotes for future books or presentations, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because this show's about how the internet's changing work, and the internet's about to change, I think, government radically, right? You told me while we were at the Always On conference that nobody has a database of all the elected officials in the United States, right?
Oh yeah, I'd love to share the project. First I thought I'd mention that, the internet is, I think we're just on the very cusp of, a major transformational change in this country when it comes to government, thanks in part to the internet. Even most conservative scientists estimate that we are likely to see 4 to 7 times as much new science and innovation in the next 25 years than we have in the preceding 25. So you think the last 25 brought us from the Apple IIe to the iPod Nano, and think about that was just, one set of change. Imagine multiplying that, taking that to a factor of 4 to 7, and it's really quite remarkable. If I take a moment, I can show you about this project we're working on. We're tentatively titled it 513 Connect.
Okay. What does 513 stand for?
Sure. Well, there are 513,000 elected officials in our country.
What kind of dog catchers or what?
Sure, everybody. Everywhere from the President of the United States to down to county commissioner and everybody. And that was last done. There was a census of the government's done in 1992. Yeah. Now my sense is that government's probably gotten a little bigger since '92, so there's probably more than that. But let's just say there's 500,000 elected officials. Trouble is we don't know where any of them are. The best known database has around 66,000 elected officials in our country. And when I found this out, I was like, well, we need to, because American Solutions is all about affecting change at such a grand scale that we need to have every single elected official involved. And we want to ultimately gather all these elected officials, because we can't possibly do it by talking to them all personally. So that's why the internet's going to be so critical to our efforts. And so and so when I found out, there's no national database of elected officials, so I started calling around to the different various secretaries of state. In most states, they are the chief election officer, the one who certified the election results. In about half the states that I've already contacted, the secretaries of state don't even know how many elected officials there are in their state. So they said, go contact the counties. Well, I'm not about to call 3,000 counties. So what instead we decided to do, and this is purely in beta right now, it's not even available to the public yet, but we're going to probably launch in the next month or two. It's called 513 Connect. And basically what you do is you have a, it's going to be very simple. Type in your zip code. I'm going to type in mine here and look up jurisdiction. And then you can look up the various different jurisdictions, and so I'll display elected officials. Now, so it's not listing them right now.
Yeah. Because you don't have the data.
Right. But so we are ultimately going to ask you to fill it in for us. And I think that, and so somebody actually, we were testing it, has already filled in, Mayor Gavin Newsom, although they spelled his name right. So that's why you can go in and change his name and save changes. And of course, if we're missing one, you can always add another elected official.
So it's like a Wikipedia for elected officials.
Exactly right.
Now, when I was walking around the Congress, I was using Wikipedia on my iPhone to do research on everybody I was about to interview and remind myself, oh, okay, this guy's the head of the Treasury Committee or whatever. And the Wikipedia has a lot of information, but it's not as simple as, if you just need a phone number and you need to figure out what your elected officials look like in your town, or how to get involved with the local government, which is where the change really happens, right?
You're exactly right, yeah.
As much as we like Obama and he says change is coming, we're not going to be able to talk to him and influence much of what he does, are we?
Yeah. And I think
but we can certainly influence our local mayor, our local city council. We can go and sit in meetings or understand how they work and have a much more influential place in our local government.
Yeah, and most people, when I tell them there's, 500,000 elected officials in this country, they're blown away. I mean, they did not realize there's that many. Yeah. And I think when this launches, it is really going to be quite remarkable when people realize how many elected officials there are, how many that represent them. And I think that, this can quickly go viral and quickly become a household product, because I think you're easily looking at around maybe 10 million people who can actively cleanse and populate the system. If you consider you got 500,000 elected officials, they either in their primary or their general election had an opponent, let's just say one, sometimes they have many, so that's 1 million. And then you had likely at least one staff person. If you're Obama, you have 300 or 400 working on your campaign, so multiply that by 2. And then you've got a spouse or significant other, and you've got at least one person who voted for them or volunteered for them, so you can easily come quickly to scale. And I think you can have a number of people who actively work on it. And what I like about this 513 Connect project that we're going to launch later this year is that we're approaching it, I think, the same way that the founders of Craigslist and Wikipedia did, is that we ultimately want to build a better product, and I want to make it free.
Explain what you mean by that, because that's a pretty interesting statement.
Yeah.
We talked about that the other day.
Sure. Well, I want to encompass all elected officials. I want everybody in the system, not just 66,000. And ultimately, we're going to make it better because we're going to have it more efficient. The way people go about finding these elected officials now is they either go door to door or they make phone calls all day. That's a very 20th century model of doing things. We're going to have harness the power of the wisdom of the crowds to fill it in for us. So it's right on the bat. And then a lot of these people who go about collecting data on elected officials, they had to put enormous capital up to hire people or to make phone calls. So they have to recoup their costs and sell this data. And as soon as they sell it, it's out of date because an elected official either resigned or
got thrown in jail.
Yeah, exactly. So. The data is always out of date, and there's a reason why Wikipedia is just so accurate. And so that's why we're going to make it free to anybody to download. Democrats or Republicans can take this data and use it, and
including all the email addresses and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if the email addresses are in here, you can take it.
That's really cool.
And so I ultimately think that when people realize how many elected officials that represent them, we will begin to affect the scale of change needed in this country.
If I had all the emails for 500,000 people, I could become as powerful as some of the lobbyists, right?
Sure.
Because I could at least try to get my message to them.
And there's nothing, and you know, the beauty about this system.
Of course, they're going to go, whoa.
Yeah, you know, and of course, the beauty about the system is that you know, someone could very well go ahead and put the personal email address of that elected official in there. You know, I mean, but somebody could very well take it out and put the, you know, so it's really is. You know, building a better product, and ultimately, I think, you know, I think Wikipedia has transformed Encyclopedia Britannica, and the newspaper industry was profoundly affected by Craigslist, and so very similarly, I think this industry that has cropped up of companies that sell lists on elected officials, I think is ultimately going to be transformed by something like 513 Connect.
Yeah. What other kinds of things are you doing, and give me an idea of what your work life is like, because you have an interesting job.
Sure. Well, you know, I've really been fascinated by metaverses, and so is the speaker. And so we are about to launch a product called Solutions Island, which is on Second Life, and I can pull that up here. Yeah. And so here's Newt's avatar, and we've got you know, this. Welcome to Solutions Island kind of thing, and I, you know, because you know, this is of course Silicon Valley, I wanted to make it have a little bit of feel of like Stanford University. So you kind of got this the Palm University Drive here kind of look.
So you're building this on your 20% time? Yeah.
I think it's, yeah. And so what we have here is an opportunity, and Solutions Island actually is only going to be available for elected officials. Oh. Because, you know, it bothered me when I heard these stories, like I think it was Ted Stevens who said, you know, the internet is a series of tubes. Yeah. And so he clearly, you know, doesn't get or understand.
Well, he built a bridge to nowhere too.
This is true, yeah. So, yeah, and so what I would like to do is develop a very modern 21st century learning and collaboration environment. Yeah. And
what are you hoping if you get a bunch of elected officials in here? What are you hoping to learn or share or teach people?
Well, it's not so much what we're going to teach them, is more like I just want to bring together, you know, I think amazing things are going to happen when you see you get a legislator from Kansas connected with a legislator from New York. And, you know, the two of them will remark, well, what's working in Kansas and what's not working maybe in New York? And we'll figure out, you know, share best practices that way. So I know Newt's going to offer some courses and different learning opportunities in here. We don't think we've defined that quite yet. But really, you know, I'll walk you into here in Second Life, and here's one of our little, yeah, it's an island, so it's got to have little kind of tiki-style meeting rooms, you know. And so here is, you know, this little room that I built, and here is a, you know, a meeting desk that you can sit down in, and you can hold different people have their meetings here. And so this is kind of a meeting, and of course, you know, true to because this. You know, this is the speaker's, you know, island on Second Life. We had to have a little bit of a personality to it. So there is, and of course, you know, I had to inject my own little personality with the island theme, and you can go windsurfing on this island. So there's got to be some fun stuff. Yeah. And I think one of my more favorite things is you can. I'm gonna fly a little bit here, and I'll take you to our zoo. We have a Solutions Island Zoo, because, you know, Newt.
That's sort of like Congress, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You know, Newt once said that he either wanted to be a zoo director or a vertebrate paleontologist, and he got pretty close to the zoo director when he became Speaker of the House. So you've got, you know, we got an elephant, of course, and we've got a giraffe, and, you know, that kind of thing, yeah. And then. We also, and of course, if you look over here, we even have a Tyrannosaurus Rex, because, you know, he's.
So this is the future of work, is to build a zoo?
Sure, you know, virtual zoos. You know, it's really amazing, though. I do think we're going to see a lot more in the future of work being done in metaverses and done virtually. I was meeting with Cisco a while back, and you know, when I got a demo of their telepresence technology, yeah. There's a lady who's one of the assistants who works via telepresence. She's one of the assistants to one of the executives who does not, you know, she works, you might say, right outside his office, but via the telepresence conference system. So she's working, I think, somewhere in Texas, and Cisco is, you know, down in San Jose, and she's, you know, working there. So I think we're going to start to see more, and it's really a powerful, I think, metaverses, whether it manifests itself in Second Life or active worlds or whatever.
Yeah. There's a bunch of them coming for the web, so you can come to a web page and have a 3D scene there that you interact with, which is a little bit lighter weight than Second Life. Second Life is a full-blown environment that you dive into. Do you think you're going to see a lot more politicians try building experiences for to talk to their electorate like this, or?
I do think so. Well, I wanted to add one thing on virtual worlds, and that's it's tremendously empowering, I think, when you have disabled people who can't walk, that they have a sense of empowerment. They can fly in Second Life, and they can walk around. I think it's tremendously empowering. So it opens up a whole new opportunity for people who have disabilities in virtual worlds. And so I think we're just beginning to see the impact of virtual worlds, and I do hope that more elected officials start getting into this. We want to be the leading edge in allowing elected officials to, experiment in this world.
Yeah.
I definitely hope that we have that opportunity.
Tell me about some of the education stuff that you're working on, because we were talking about that earlier, where you're trying to work with universities. Or tell me a little bit about what you were trying to do with education and changing how people.
Absolutely, yeah. This is another fun project that we're working on. It's called the Solutions Academy. This is kind of a theme. There's, we'll talk about the Solutions Lab and Solutions Island, and so the Solutions Academy is, I think, someday going to be on par with the University of Phoenix.
Okay.
What we want to do is build an environment for candidates, elected officials, and activists to take courses on transforming government. And this is not a Democrat or Republican thing, right? No, and I'll explain why. When you hear about the courses we're offering and who's offering them, I'm not personally a big fan of campaign finance reform. I don't want to get too much into politics here, but I think one of the challenges it is put on the system is that candidates, elected officials have to go to fundraiser when you're talking federal candidates, and raise money in these small increments because it's so expensive to campaign. And so consequently, they just go from campaign to campaign, and they're so rushed that all they have time for is to speak these rehearsed sound bites that their consultants told them to, because they're going to be late for the next fundraiser. So they got to hurry up, and so they don't have any time to focus on ideas or solutions. Yeah. And so what ends up happening is, if they get elected, what happens is they sort of look like Robert Redford, the last scene in the movie The Candidate, where it's what do I do now? I mean, in some cases they have 45 days, after November, to assemble a staff, move into their office, and begin governing. And that's really hard. Newt has said that governing is 10 times harder than campaigning. And so what we want to do is provide the tools that they're ready when they take office to be ready, and so they're not going to be quickly co-opted by the special interests, and they have the resources necessary and the knowledge necessary, the best practices on their side. And so it's going to be open to any elected official, and probably candidates as well. And I'll give you two examples of courses we're going to offer. One is going to be taught by Elaine Kmark. She's a professor at Harvard, and she was head of Al Gore's Office of Reinventing Government. And so she actually did a course already for us called The End of Government as We Know It. Another course is going to be taught by Dennis Smith. And Dennis Smith is one of the nation's foremost expert when it comes to metrics. And he advised Chief Bratton and they together developed ComStat in New York City, which fundamentally lowered crime in New York City, made it the safest big city in the world. And so he's going to do a course on metrics in government. So these are all very nonpartisan ideas to use technology. The courses that we're going to offer in the Solutions Academy could be, they might take the form of podcast. live video, streaming video. They could be video on demand. You are probably going to be able to take courses either by yourself or with a group of people. You might have online quizzes or download homework and upload your results. So it's just going to be a vast online learning environment for all these elected officials who want to learn about ideas in transforming government. We've got Porter Goss, who is the former head of the CIA. He's going to be involved in our efforts. And so a number of nonpartisan and people on both sides of the aisle that are really dedicated. Roy Romer is the former head of the DNC, Democratic National Committee, and he's really involved in education now with his group Ed in '08. They're funded by the Gates Foundation, so he's going to be really involved in our efforts about looking at how we bring education to the 21st century. I was just meeting, one of the great things I get to do in Silicon Valley here is meet with cool companies all day, and anybody who's watching this show, and wants to get in touch with me afterwards, you can do so at AmericanSolutions.com, and so I'm definitely want to meet companies that are, have an idea to transform government. Yep. I was just meeting with a lady yesterday by the name of Bobby Cushnan, who runs a company that Scott McNeely founded, or it's a foundation actually, called Kralik. And Kralik is actually a combination of curriculum and wiki. Yep. And we spend about, I think I heard from her, about $4 billion a year, federally speaking, on textbooks. Yep. And imagine if we can do what Wikipedia did to Encyclopedia Britannica. Kralik wants to do that to textbooks, where you can have experts and all of it. And she's saying that they're building coalitions of with the AARP to have retired teachers get involved and become subject matter experts and change the way we think about educating our children.
We could spend another half an hour just talking about education, because I've talked to several professors and other people who say that the cell phone is going to revolutionize education, because it's always on, it's always connected. And our kids, I talked to a high school teacher who taught in Baltimore, and he told me I had to teach with 35-year-old books that were tattered and torn, and our school district didn't have the money to go and buy these new books because they're $70, $80 a piece. Yet if we could get something like a cell phone, and as the costs come down over the next 10 years, the costs are going to go into almost zero. We're going to be able to get live data. That's how I was doing my research, right? Walking around the Capitol was with an iPhone and going, hey, Wikipedia, looking up, different people's names.
Yeah, and, it's totally amazing.
Look up Ed Markey, and see what comes up about him. And there's so much information online about everything now. So.
And so, what was your maybe key takeaways about Congress? I mean, if that we can sort of get them. If we had a message for Congress today, how do we? I mean, I'm trying to figure out how we modernize government.
My number one takeaway from talking to both Republicans and Democrats is the administration needs a CTO, needs somebody who isn't just CTO, somebody who focuses on technology and science that they can talk with and have a discussion. And right now they don't. They don't have somebody like that they can go to and have a discussion about what the policy should be. But anyways, it's amazing. We're going. I told you it would go fast.
Yeah,
29 minutes already gone. So I just wanted to thank you. This is great, and we're going to spend a lot more time afterwards, maybe getting more into the education and
I'd love
some of
to.
the other stuff. But next week's guest is going to be the Google analytics team. So we're going to have some really interesting discussions about how to use analytics in the future work. And
sounds
we
fascinating.
can talk after the show about how you guys are using that in your work. And after the show, we're going to have an after-show party on kite.tv. It's kyte.tv/Scobalizer. And it looks like do we have one more minute left of it looks like one more minute. So do you have one last thing that you want to show us what your life is like?
We're working also on a product, we have it up now, called the Solutions Lab, and it's your opportunity for user-generated content. 3/4 of the Solutions Lab homepage we don't even control. You've got the top rated, the most viewed, and the featured. We have this little section called the featured solution that we do. And so we encourage you all to sign up an account. It's free in American Solutions. You can share your solution. It's an easy kind of 3-step process. If your solution is a YouTube video, you can import a video directly on YouTube. Yeah. There's great opportunities to form teams around that and collaborate in a real-time wiki-style editor.
Very cool. Well, thank you for this.
I appreciate the opportunity.
It's been a real privilege talking to you, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do to improve our government.
I appreciate it. Thanks again.
So thank you for joining us, and now get back to work.